Hi. So I've never been a waitress in my life, although that would have been so hysterically hilarious and tragic at the same time. But today I was considering how to sing is somehow similar to waiting tables.
Per questo io non ne ho più.
When you are carrying the singing line, it's just like carrying a tray with a glass that is so full of water that the minimum movement will make it spill. So you have to be very careful when you are carrying that line not to make any abrupt movement. It could be a cup of coffee. It could be a cup of very hot coffee. A waiter, when he's carrying something he must deliver at a table, must behave exactly like a singer who is doing his routine appoggio and sostegno. Appoggio and sostegno are two words that are most of the time taken one for another and mistaken one for another, but they mean different things. Appoggiare in Italian means to lay down something on something else. So appoggiare is something that happens from above towards below. Sostenere, instead, is something that happens from below towards above. So sostenere goes in the exact opposite direction. And a waiter who's waiting tables needs to counterweight exactly the amount of weight that he is carrying. Not more, not less, because if it's less, the glass will drop. If it's more, the glass will go to outer space. That's exactly what happens when we are singing. We have an appoggio and we have a sostegno. Exactly the necessary amount to carry that weight gently and without dropping whatever you are carrying. Woo! Getting good at this. See? Singing experience. So if instead of this glass of water, the waiter was carrying, say, something lighter, the bill, okay? The bill. Something lighter, but not for this reason easier to carry, because a bill, this is actually a quite heavy piece of paper. I need to find something else. So this is an actual receipt. Okay, so if you're carrying something much lighter, the risk at that point, damn it, it's too heavy. Feathers it is. Appoggio and sostegno, made one for another all the time. This is what happens. This metaphor of the waiter with his tray and whatever he's carrying on it serves to explain what I just made a hint to in my previous video with the metaphor of the umbrella. When I was talking of the counterweight, I said that when we are opening an umbrella, we hold it by the handle, so we counterweight by the handle and then open it. Now, that counterweight, it's always created and generated by the weight you are about to lay on it. So there is no default counterweight. There's a counterweight that you adapt at every breath, that you adapt to whatever it is that you are about to sing. And neither of these forces is stronger than the other. Really important, because if that counterweight is really strong and elastically strong at the same time, you can carry whatever you want and adapt to whatever it is that you are carrying immediately. So counterweight is some sort of instinctive reaction that the body has when it's about to receive a sound, which is true for other categories as well. For example, conductors know that when they give an order to the orchestra, they have to be able to embrace the sound that's coming back. So it's really important that they have the energy to get back a little hint like the singer does when he conceives the sound in his thought, and then it's all about embracing the sound that is coming back, and that counterweight is instinctively given to the weight we know is coming. I've been talking previously about how singing is really not a matter of air. Air stops at our vocal cords, two very small and light membranes. The art of signoreggiare il proprio fiato, to master one's own breath. There have to be no abrupt blows, otherwise the vocal cords that are trying to stay abducted will separate. And in order to keep them closed, to obtain the pitch, the arytenoids and the other cartilages will do twice the work. That will be a very bad circle that will be generated. So the flow of air has to be incredibly subtle and continuous. When we breathe, not every time we need to reboot completely, reset the instrument completely, because we know that breaths in between the phrases are like sips of air that have the purpose to regenerate, refresh, and re-energize the posture. Sometimes you take in some breath, some actual breath, to survive, like oxygen for your brain. But most of the time, it's not about the air. We can keep the open umbrella position even without breath intake. At every breath, the risk is that we collapse completely and that we lose completely that steam, okay, that natural reverberation that our voice, if well placed, creates. And that steam is crucial, because that steam, that mist, is in fact what allows our ear to perceive our voice correctly. That mist of overtones is what gives us a good pitch and a good control of the pitch and of our instrument. I like to think of the human voice and the sung human voice in particular, and the operatic sung human voice in particular, as the Milky Way. The Milky Way. Why the Milky Way? Because we see that white steam that each and every star generates. If that steam wasn't there, we wouldn't see a way, we wouldn't see a line. We would see, just as on music scores, separate dots. In order to make a line with those dots, we need that mist, that steam, that makes the Milky Way both milky and a way. So actually, whenever we are carrying the weight of our vocal line, we are both carrying, the main star, the main thing. But with that star come overtones, comes a mist of other things that go with. And when we are carrying a sound and we're trying to do a legato from one sound to the other, we are actually trying. This is really beautiful, actually. The crystal and the glass and the feathers. It's very Yoko Ono.
I'd like a single plum floating in perfume served in a man's hat.
Here you go.
I'm having a glass of water on a tray of white feathers. Woo! See? This is what happens when you get distracted. So whenever we are carrying our vocal line, we're carrying the main star and the milky mist that goes with the star, and we need not to spill anything. And especially if we are in between phrases, the risk is very high, very, very high, because we need to take a very quick breath. We don't have a lot of time to prepare the attack that follows, so we have to be very delicate, and somehow we need, oh no, I need to find a way to breathe without dropping my plate. Because if I drop my plate, all of a sudden, the mist of overtones will change and the sound will become sort of flat towards the end. And if that keeps happening at every breath, I will be definitely flat at the end of the piece. So I have to stay high and sustained and kind of breathe in disguised, but keeping that plate up so that the movement must be just, an imperceivable re-energizement of the action. And that's particularly true when we are building up a phrase towards a climax, for example. It's very dangerous to completely drop the breathing apparatus in order to relax in the middle of a phrase, because we will become flat at the end of the semi-phrase, and it will be much harder in that super short time we have to get back on the horse in pitch, and that's how and why we have those, and that's true especially in older singers. And why does that happen in older singers? Because their muscles are less elastic, so that young waiter, bartender counterweight, starts fading. And it has somehow to foresee. The good waiter, as the good singers, foresees, avoids bumps in the road. This is a truth of physics, because us little men on earth perceive time in a certain way, but if we put two synchronized watches, one at sea level and the other one on the top of a high mountain, we will see that even on the same planet, they start marking different times. That's because, as good Albert Einstein taught us, time is a thing. Space-time is an object that can be deformed, and the main thing that deforms it is gravity. This is one of the crucial questions I ask myself. How can music be so absolute as an art if it's so dramatically subject to time, and time does not exist? It's weird. It's weird. I'll say it to you in the words of this guy. An event is something that happens at a particular point in space and at a particular time. So one can specify it by 4 numbers or coordinates. Again, the choice of coordinates is arbitrary. One can use any 3 well-defined spatial coordinates in any measure of time. In relativity, there is no real distinction between the space and time coordinates, just as there is no real difference between any 2 space coordinates. But this is not what I wanted to read you. Consider a pair of twins. Suppose that one twin goes to live on the top of a mountain while the other one stays at the sea level. The first twin would age faster than the second. Thus, if they met again, one would be older than the other. In this case, the difference in ages would be very small, but it would be much larger if one of the twins went for a long trip in a spaceship at nearly the speed of light. When he returned, he would be much younger than the one who stayed on Earth. This is known as the twins' paradox. And this is not what I wanted to read. Again, I'll find it later. Anyway, every sound is like is a point of observation in universe. And in universe, every point of observation is the same. So wherever you are looking at the universe, in the universe, you will see the same things somehow. And whenever we are producing a sound, we are the center, the nucleus of a cosmos, of a space-time cosmos. And we have at hand, okay, in every direction, a certain portion of future, a certain portion of past, a certain portion of right, a certain portion of left. So whenever we are singing a sound, we are in a very indefinite moment of time that involves anticipation from the future and memories from the past. That anticipation and memories in singing are the steam of the voice, not exactly the vibrato, but that mist that is particularly clear, neat, and nice to hear in the Italian language for mere acoustic reasons, for geographical resonance reason of the country, the type of air, the humidity, and so on. The vowels are perceived in an extremely clear way, and every vowel develops such a steam that well connects one sound with the sound that follows, as well with the sound that precedes, which is called legato. Italian legato is this concealing action that the natural mist of the Italian vowels, the 7 pure Italian vowels, create, and at their own time, the 7 pure Italian vowels developed in these very specific acoustic conditions. Even if we were colonized and we started speaking another language that is not Italian, that language would take the connotations of the Italian language because the geography of the place stays the same. The same way English, when transplanted into Northern America, started being very nasal because it adapted to the geographic conditions of the northern part of the American continent, and it started to sound exactly like the languages of the Native Americans who lived there. Completely different languages spoken on completely different frequency bands, because the frequency band of a language comes with the necessity of listen to one another. So if the impediment is harder, we will start nasalizing more. Italian doesn't need to do that because Italian has quite a balanced air, and the 7 pure Italian vowels that developed in these acoustic conditions are apparently the perfect receipt for this type of singing that requires legato. Okay, so how do you obtain legato? By keeping that mist constantly alive and by providing constant support and constant appoggio, a perfect constant counterweight that supports your vocal line at all times. This is a perfect mechanism. I conceive a sound, I conceive a phrase when I'm singing Italian opera. I create a counterweight to offer that phrase correctly without abrupt movements that may spill my whatever I'm carrying all over on my audience, and I make sure that that steam, that mist of my Milky Way stays on at all times, so that my ear has literally a way, a road to look at, and it will be easier to control, to carry, to follow, whatever. Well, I think I made my point. So counterweight at all times, make it a real counterweight. Counterweight depends on the weight, otherwise it would be just strength. It has to be the exact counterweight you need to carry whatever you need to carry. If it's nothing, it can also be nothing when you're just straining. If it's Stephen Hawking, you will start counterweighting a little, differently. It can be just feathers, like when you're singing pianissimo, and in that case you will have to deal with your counterweight in order not to make these feathers, fly all over the place. Yeah, here it is. So now, at first sight, all this evidence that the universe looks the same whichever direction we look in might seem to suggest there is something special about our place in the universe. In particular, it might seem that if we observe all other galaxies to be moving away from us, then we must be at the center of the universe. There is, however, an alternate explanation. The universe might look the same in every direction as seen from any other galaxy too. This, as we have seen, was Friedman's second assumption. We have no scientific evidence for or against this assumption. We believe it only on grounds of modesty. It would be most remarkable if the universe looked the same in every direction around us, but not around other point in the universe. Come on, let's not be narcissists. In Friedman's model, all the galaxies are moving directly away from each other. But in Through the Looking Glass, the second book by Lewis Carroll, there is this episode where the White Queen starts bleeding out of the blue for no reason, and Alice asks why that's happening, and the White Queen replies, because I'm about to hurt myself with the thorn of a rose. Lewis Carroll was the pseudonymous, was the nom de plume of Charles Dodgson, and he was a mathematician and a physicist who taught at Oxford. Actually, Alice Liddell was the daughter of his dean, of his faculty dean. In Through the Looking Glass, the Looking Glass, you come closer to the mirror, and then poof, there's the central point, and then from the central point you start departing, but it's always symmetrical, and we could be going on forever, because the first book is Alice Underground, and it's the two-dimension of above the ground and underground. In Through the Looking Glass, it's on this side of the glass and on that side of the glass. Well, Alice is very important for us when we're singing, because we are taking care of all the direction, and we are counterweighting in every single, direction. We are creating a space, okay, for our candle to burn freely. Yeah.